So Floyd Mayweather, throughout his career, kind of coined the phrase easy work. And watching this fight, Canelo versus Chavez Jr. reminded me very much of that phrase, easy work. All three judges scored the fight 12-0 to Chavez Jr. Sorry, bloody hell, that would have been a robbery. All three judges scored the fight 12-0 to Canelo. And I've got to say, I agree wholeheartedly with that scorecard. I know the Box Nation commentators on the footage I was watching, I think they scored an odd round to Chavez, but I had 12-0 to Canelo on my scorecard at this end. And I thought it was a very, very good performance from Canelo and a very, very poor performance from Chavez Jr. And those two things coming together at the same time meant that this became an extremely one-sided fight. So let's start by talking about the matchup. Really, this was a case of, for the first half of the fight, Chavez Jr. doing very, very little indeed. He was incredibly low volume. Canelo was teeing off with all sorts of punches. Canelo was out jabbing the bigger man. From really the first and second rounds, you see Canelo bringing his full array of punches in his arsenal into effect. So, you know, Canelo was having huge success with the uppercut. You know, fantastic uppercut he's got. He was having huge success by dropping a level and going with a hook to the body, which is another fantastic punch in his repertoire. He was also having real success with sort of a big wide hook to the head, followed up with a straight right. You know, he was landing punches in bunches, and Canelo looked superb in there. I've got to say, I think this may be the best that I've seen Canelo look, admittedly against what appeared to be a sparring partner in Chavez Jr. But I think not having to cut himself down to the lighter weights, coming in at 164, may just have brought the best out of Canelo. The hand speed was fantastic. Although he didn't really ever hurt Chavez Jr., the punches just looked like they had a lot of weight behind them. That combined with the speed meant they looked like really snappy, eye-catching punches. His timing was sublime. The best punch in the fight is the 5th round. Chavez throws a jab, Canelo kind of pulls away from the jab. It was all, I mean, this is the second time in this video I'm going to mention Mayweather, and there'll probably be a third, but he almost sort of leant back and then exploded into it with a right hand and clocked Chavez hard over the eye. You know, Chavez ate a huge amount of big power punches from Canelo Alvarez in this fight, and I've got to say I was really taken with Canelo's performance. Canelo definitely represents an improving fighter to me. If you look at some of the mistakes he was making early on in his career, when he fought Erislandy Lara, when he was fighting Austin Trout, you know, those guys took multiple rounds of him. But recently, I do feel he's improved past that, and I think he's become a far more well-rounded boxer, you know, than he used to be. I think Floyd Mayweather, it is arguable that in time Canelo Alvarez will turn into Floyd Mayweather's greatest ever win. Because if you look at the fact that Canelo's 26, and if you look at his resume already at 26, Chavez Jr. last night, Cotto, Lara, Trout, I'm sure there's more names that I haven't put together. But if you look at the way that Mayweather handled him, Mayweather 12-0'd Canelo in my book. That was a masterpiece in timing from Floyd Mayweather. You know, he made that fight at precisely the right moment, in my opinion. And I'm not saying Canelo would beat Floyd Mayweather if they fought today. Mayweather certainly appeared to be the far superior fighter. But Canelo, you know, is vastly improved from that performance, and he's improved in the majority of areas. Actually, he's become a very well-rounded and very accomplished fighter. Chavez Jr., I don't know what was wrong with him. Well, I mean, there's a few reasons that could be wrong with him. I think he felt the power of Canelo early. I think that counterpunch in the 5th taught him that, you know, he's got to be very, very careful when throwing punches, because Canelo was looking to counter him and to time him and to counter him very, very hard. So maybe that kind of put him back in his cell. Maybe he didn't want to take any risks and risk getting knocked out badly. Maybe, as he sort of suggested in his post-fight interview, maybe the weight suck it out of him. He said that he didn't have the normal punches, the normal speed, the normal distance that he usually had, and he certainly looked very, very slow in the hand speed department compared to Canelo. I did do a video after the weigh-in, and I said that Chavez Jr. looked so drained. I was expecting a flat performance. I was actually kind of impressed he went the distance. So, you know, maybe that's what it was. Maybe Chavez realised that he was so dead at the weight, and he was feeling the power early on, that quite quickly the goal in the fight went from winning the fight to going the distance. Maybe that was kind of the target from Chavez towards the middle rounds of this fight, towards the end. But it was a very, very flat performance from Chavez. He did very, very little of note in the fight. There wasn't a single occasion that you could say he caught Canelo with something that was particularly meaningful. Canelo didn't really have any marks on his face whatsoever towards the end of the fight. There's a few times where Canelo was trying to sucker Chavez in to counterpunch, and he basically just sits on the rope with a high guard for 20, 30 second splurges, and Chavez Jr. kind of comes up to him and feigns trying to flurry on him, but he didn't even really commit to that. You know, he was so tentative, so nervous about getting counterpunched at that particular moment, that it looked to me that he was holding back. And even when he had a fighter against the ropes in a fight, he was 7-8 rounds down on the cards. You know, even when Canelo was up on the ropes, allowing him to tee off, Chavez didn't really tee off at all. You know, he kind of was very, very tentative, very, very survival first, even at that moment. So it was a disappointing fight. It was a very disappointing performance from Chavez Jr. and a very good performance from Canelo Alvarez. It's very hard to know how much to read into the form, because as I said in my video prior to this fight, unfortunately this is going to be one of those fights where the main talking point before the fight was the weight, and the main talking point after the fight was the weight. What I will say is, whilst it's hard to know how good the Chavez Jr. in there was that Canelo beat because he was so drained, I do believe Canelo is a far superior fighter at middleweight than he is at light middleweight. He didn't look necessarily... I know Chavez is a lot taller and rangier than him, but Canelo didn't look small in there by any stretch to my imagination. I still think he'll be a very good-sized 160-pound fighter. So yeah, all in all, real credit goes to Canelo Alvarez. It's just hard to quantify what this form means in terms of whether or not Chavez at 164 represented a world-class opponent, or, you know, more of a domestic level opponent. But Canelo, he's got some of the best punch variety in boxing. You know, his uppercut, his jab, his hook to the body, his hook to the head combinations. You know, this is a really, really good fighter with good hand speed, good power. Yeah, a real lot to like against Canelo. I still don't think he's at his absolute best against like a slick back foot fighter. I think a guy like Danny Jacobs or Billy Joe Saunders. I'm not saying either of those guys beat Canelo, but I think they make it a hell of a lot more tougher fight than Chavez Jr. based on how slippery they are and how slick they can be, etc. But yeah, Canelo is a very, very good fighter. Now, the moment of this night's boxing came at the end of the fight in the post-fight interviews, when Canelo Alvarez welcomed Gennady Golovkin to the ring, and it was announced that the deal had been done for the two men to fight on the 16th of September. So, what a year this is for boxing. I mean, some of the fights we've had this year already, this has got to be one of the best years in recent boxing history, surely. I mean, the fights, I'm going to forget a few here, but the Gale Badu Jack, the two top guys at 168 pounds, Frampton Santa Cruz rematch, Joshua versus Klitschko, the top two at heavyweight. We got Brook versus Errol Spence coming up, and now, yeah, Golovkin versus Canelo. What a major, major fight that is, and a fascinating fight. And for me, whilst Golovkin historically has always been the favourite in that fight, for me, Canelo looked better than ever in the recent fight against Chavez, and Golovkin probably put in the worst performance of his career against Danny Jacobs. which creates a fascinating vibe in the lead up to this fight. That maybe the momentum is with Canelo and maybe Father Time is against Golovkin. There are those in the Golovkin camp who suggested that a poor performance against Danny Jacobs was ideal because it would maybe mean that Canelo would be more inclined to take the fight. Perhaps that's what happened. Canelo certainly represents a very different challenge to Jacobs. I think Canelo, brings in many ways a lot more to the table than Jacobs did, but he probably lacks some of the sort of movement, footwork, slickness, back foot game of a Danny Jacobs, which seemingly caused Triple G a lot of problems when the two guys fought. I'm going to have a large think on that matchup today, Canelo-Golovkin, and I'm going to do a special video tomorrow, Monday, either a video or a live show to discuss early thoughts on that matchup, because that's one to savour, certainly. But let me know your thoughts, guys, on either that matchup or on the Chavez matchup. Leave your comments in the section below. If you've enjoyed the video, please hit the thumbs up button, which adds visibility to my channel. And if you're new, do subscribe so you can check out my other videos, including the video tomorrow that will go up on Canelo versus Chavez Jr. Many thanks indeed for watching, guys. Appreciate you guys tuning into my channel. Thanks for watching.